Self-centeredness versus being centered in self. The other day I made a video about Christmas and surviving Christmas, and I made two major points. One is finding out about the true nature of Christmas, and two, about your quintessential self. So what is the quintessential self? What is self-centeredness? What is centered in self? Centered in self is back to the quintessential self. Now, we have an issue in life. We have a lot of people, we feel they're very selfish people, and nobody wants to be self-centered. Nobody wants to be a selfish person. Nobody wants to be a selfish person. Nobody wants to be, uh, ignoring other people. Okay, and so we want people to be generous. We want people to be good. And of course, being a selfish person is not a good thing. It's better to be a generous person, both for your own benefit of others. But there is a valid place for being centered in self. Okay, and there's a difference. So if we look at, I think it's an ideal example is Christmas time, because Christmas time we think of rituals, we think of festivities, and it's a social function. And this is our social self interacts into the world in social functions. But we also have a quintessential self. What's the quintessential self? The quintessential self is who you are when you close the door of your apartment or house, who you are with your close family members and friends, who you are when you're alone with yourself. That's your quintessential self. And often there's a difference. We have a public face and we have a private face. And the big challenge we actually have a lot of the time is that there's a conflict between our public self and our private self, okay? And obviously we don't like people being very selfish and self-centered. But it's very easy to align yourself too much with the public self and ignore the quintessential self. And when you do that, when you're doing too much of this, and I give you an example of a lot of people feeling, say, at Christmas time, that they don't like hanging out with the family, they don't like the festivities. Again, this is too much over here on the social side and too little on the quintessential side. The quintessential side is rotting away in the corner somewhere, like a little skeleton. It's not getting any food, okay? We see it in things like weddings, for example. People having a big deal about their wedding, but maybe not enjoying it, okay? Because again, they're doing all this social stuff, but they're not really enjoying it. And so if you're ever in a situation in life, I think we're all in a situation in life, certain parties, certain social events, certain situations whereby we seem to be giving a lot to this social side and fitting in with society, but we're not really happy in ourselves. And this is where being centered in self is really important. And it can seem selfish. So if, say, a family member or friend says, do you want to go out for this party? And you self-reflect and think, no, I don't like it. It seems to them you're selfish because you're not joining the party. But actually, you are at that stage being centered in self. Centered in self means you go back to the quintessential self and align yourself with the more real version of you. It's not that the social version is not real, but it's you fitting in. And we do need a social version. We do need to fit in to some degree. But we also have this side as well. And if you ever want to be happy, if you ever want to be satisfied, you have to nurture the quintessential self. The you who you really are. The you that actually likes putting your feet up and having a cup of hot chocolate. The you that likes watching Netflix, well, binging on Netflix and eating 5 bags of potato chips. That you is also important. And it's not being selfish. Okay? We don't like self-centeredness. But some of the time, you have to be centered in self. And centered in self means, sometimes being centered in self means doing charity work. Sometimes being centered in self means serving others. But sometimes centered in self means chilling, not joining the party, not going on a holiday, not fitting in, saying no. I don't want to build that extension on my house. I don't want to marry this person. I don't want to go to that holiday. I don't want to do that course. I don't want to change the paint color in the living room. Okay? So it can come across to others in your family and friends and workers and people you work with and so on, schoolmates and so on, college mates. It can come across as selfish. And I think it's very easy to say, well, that person's not fitting in and they're very selfish. But there's a difference between being selfish and centered in self, okay? It's terribly important that you are centered in self. And the hard part of being centered in self is sometimes you're going to have to say no. There was a book back in the 70s, I think it was, called Why Do I Say Yes When I Want to Say No? And the essence of that book is that we are kind of raised to say, yes, we should be good boys and good girls, and we should fit in and do well and be nice. But sometimes we have to say no. There has to be certain boundaries. There has to be certain times where I want to do something because I like it, okay? And there's a difference between the selfish, as in a person who really just cares about themselves, and a person who's centered in self. Now, the final thing you might ask yourself is, how do I know when I'm selfish and how do I know when I'm centered in self? There can be a crossover, and sometimes we think we're centered in self, we're actually selfish. It's difficult to know, but you have to look at every situation differently. And in general, when we're centered in self, it means that we're tuning into who we really are and where we're at today. And if we're being true to ourselves, sometimes we have to say no. Whereas if we're selfish, again, you have to take feedback from other people and see. Like you might say to somebody, no, I won't go to the party this time, but you ain't going to any parties. Or I don't feel like washing the dishes today, but you're never washing the dishes. So it's something you have to self-evaluate. We are prone to selfishness, and none of us want to be selfish. It's not a nice thing to be selfish, but we do need to tune into ourselves, okay? So I can't exactly tell you when you're being self-centered and when you're being centered in self. But when you are centered in self, you're more likely to actually do service for others, because also being centered in self is the flip side of doing things that are in tune with you. And in tune with you sometimes means, damn it, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to help that person. Even though everybody told me not to help the person, I'm going to help them. Okay? It's also centered in self. If you're centered in self, you're definitely going to become a contrarian, because you are making independent decisions, and human beings tend to like sheepish decisions. Okay? But that is the essence of it. If you become centered in self, more so than selfish, you'll find yourself doing sometimes oddball things, even surprise yourself, because it's the right thing to do for you at that time, that's aligned with or congruent with who you really are as a person. And the strange thing is, when you do things which are aligned with you as a person, even though sometimes it might surprise yourself the things you're doing, you're putting your hand up for one thing that you never thought you'd do, and you're putting your hand down for something you always did. Because it's in real time rather than just habitual niceness. And habitual niceness will get you somewhere, but also force you into that social zone, which disenfranchises the real you. Unless the real you is happy, you ain't going to be happy. So that is the nature of being centered in self. I can't say exactly how you can get there, obviously self-reflection and so on, but it's something to think about. Next time you're in a situation where you could do something or not do something. Am I being selfish? Am I being centered in self? Should I be centered in self? Should I be selfish? What should I do? What should I do right now? Should I join the party? Should I serve the person? What should I do? And if we do more of this, just stopping for a second and thinking, should I or shouldn't I? Will I go to the party? Will I help the person? Will I sit alone? Will I do this? Will I do that? The more we tune into what I really want to do, okay? And often when people do this initially, they become a little bit selfish along the way, because when you start tuning into what you want to do rather than fitting into society all the time, it does to some degree bring about a more selfish version of you. And most people, when they start doing this centering self business, they become a little bit selfish. And that's why it's very good to reflect every day, because then you can go back the other way and realize, oh, I've been a little bit too selfish there, because we do have to compromise with other people. But it's just something to think about. Selfishness, self-centeredness, versus being centered in self. And think about, in real time, in every situation that comes to you, do I really want to do this? Or do I want to do something else? Should I really do this? Should I really do something else? And really find out what the real you, the quintessential you, wants, which sometimes can be different than what the egotistical version you wants. Sometimes it will have you doing things for others that you didn't really want to do, and sometimes it'll have you saying no to stuff that you always did. But when you do align yourself, when there is congruency between your outer actions and who you really are as a person, you'll find an inner glow of satisfaction, okay? And if you're doing social activities like parties and festivals and all this stuff, and living a certain external lifestyle, if you're not satisfied, it means that self, the real self, as it were, is not being satisfied. Okay, so just think about it. Self-centeredness versus centered in self. It is a spectrum. We spend more time on that side than this side. Okay, hope you liked the video. If you do, please like and subscribe. And I'll talk to you next time.